For generations, owning a home was basically the cornerstone of the American dream, right? But lately, that dream feels, well, more like a fantasy. I mean, prices are soaring, there's nothing on the market, and for millions of us, the numbers just don't add up. So what is really going on? Let's break it down.
I mean, this is the question on everybody's mind. It doesn't matter if you're a renter dreaming about your first place, or even a homeowner who's wondering if you can ever move. It just feels like the entire system is broken. So in this explainer, we're going to dig into the key factors that got us here.
Okay, let's start with just one number that kind of explains everything. 5.6. To buy a median-priced home in the US today, you would need an income that is 5.6 times the median. That is an all-time record high, and it just perfectly captures the insane affordability crisis we are in. But how on earth did this gap get so wide?
Well, our first stop is this really strange, almost invisible force that has brought the entire housing market to a screeching halt. It's something that wasn't even a big deal a few years ago, but right now, it is dictating everything.
It's called the mortgage lock-in effect. And look, think of it like this. Millions of homeowners either bought or refinanced when interest rates were at historic lows. We're talking like 3%. But now, with rates way up near 7%, moving would mean trading in that amazing deal for a much, much more expensive one. They're basically trapped by their own good luck, locked in by what some people are calling golden handcuffs.
And this is just how powerful that lock-in really is. For a typical homeowner, if they sold their current place and bought another home at today's prices and rates, their monthly mortgage payment would jump by an average of 73.2%. I mean, faced with a choice like that, what would you do? Yeah, most people are choosing to stay exactly where they are. And that one decision, when it's multiplied millions of times over, has created this deep freeze across the entire market. Economists figure that this lock-in effect is keeping about 1.7 million homes from ever even being listed for sale. This just completely chokes off the supply for buyers, it drives up competition for the few homes that are available, and it keeps prices stubbornly high.
But, you know, this lock-in effect is really just pouring fuel on a fire that's been burning for decades. The deeper, more chronic problem is that for a very long time, we just haven't built enough homes, especially not in the places where people actually want to live.
Take a look at this. This kind of neighborhood probably looks really familiar. And, well, that's by design. For almost 100 years, our cities have been shaped by single-family zoning. These are laws that often make it flat-out illegal to build anything other than one big house on one big lot. And that effectively outlaws more affordable options, like duplexes, townhomes, or even small apartment buildings in huge parts of our communities. And this table just brilliantly illustrates the real-world impact. In super restrictive cities like Boston and Seattle, you can see the number of homes that are actually built falls hundreds of units short of what even the strict zoning laws allow. This gap, the one between allowed and built, shows you exactly how these restrictive policies create a massive barrier to new construction, which directly feeds into the housing shortage. Okay, so let's say you do it. You navigate the crazy high prices, the lack of inventory, and you actually buy a home. So your expenses are fixed now, right? Your journey's over? Well, not exactly. The sticker price is just the beginning. There's a whole other layer of costs that are surprising a lot of homeowners.
Get ready for this number. $15,979. That is the average amount a U.S. homeowner now spends every single year on the so-called hidden costs of owning a home. Stuff beyond the mortgage. And what's even worse is that these costs are rising faster than incomes, putting an even tighter squeeze on family budgets.
So, where is all that money going? Well, property taxes and insurance are a big chunk for sure, but the lion's share? It's home maintenance. At almost $11,000 a year, the cost of upkeep and repairs is the single most common regret among recent home buyers. So many of them say they were just completely unprepared for that financial strain.
So, the market is frozen, we aren't building enough, and owning a home is way more expensive than we ever thought. It's a pretty bleak picture. But is this just how it has to be? To find an answer, we actually need to look abroad and explore some radically different ways of thinking about housing.
And right here, this is the crucial point. It's a fundamental difference in philosophy. In the US, we pretty much treat housing as a financial asset, right? It's an investment, it's meant to grow in value, but in cities like Vienna and Singapore, they start from a totally different place. The idea that housing is a public good, a basic need that should be accessible to everyone. This philosophy is exactly why Vienna is often called a renter's utopia. An incredible 60% of the population lives in high-quality social housing.
And get this, it's not just for the poor. 3/4 of all residents actually qualify, including the middle class. This completely removes the stigma and creates these stable, integrated communities where your lease is indefinite and can even be passed on to your kids.
Now, Singapore took a different path, but with the exact same core belief. There, the government's Housing Development Board has built over 1 million public apartments. And today, over 80% of the population lives in them, and an incredible 90% of those residents own their homes. They treat housing not as a market commodity, but as a foundational pillar for the entire country's success.
This quote, which sums up the philosophy behind models like Vienna's, really gets to the heart of it all. It invites us to just imagine a system where the main goal isn't maximizing property values, but making sure everyone has a secure and affordable place to live. That one single shift in thinking is what holds up these incredibly successful models.
Which leaves us with a final and, I think, pretty provocative question. We've seen the consequences of treating housing mainly as a financial asset, and we've seen what's possible when it's treated as a public good. So the question we really have to ask ourselves is this: if housing truly is a fundamental human need, shouldn't our policies start acting like it?